Ladies and gentlemen, gather round, because tonight we're diving deep into one of the world's simplest and yet most perplexing tales, the epic saga of Adam and Eve, or as I like to call it, the original sitcom pitch for the world's first parental advisory warning. Picture this: a flawless garden where all your fantasies bloom, and the biggest issues are deciding between eating a fig or a pomegranate. And no, you don't have to swipe right to make your choice. This isn't your typical Adam and Eve retelling full of sanctimony and somber tones. Oh no, my friends, we're serving it up with a hefty scoop of absurdity and a side of history that'll rival any soap opera. Here in paradise, we've got a charismatic couple on the world's most awkward first date, a snake with more charm than your average Tinder date, and a tree so tempting it makes candy look like broccoli. So, what's the skinny on the infamous fruit that sent shockwaves through the world like a Kardashian revealing a new makeup line? We'll experience the bittersweet irony of knowledge. That pesky little apple was less of a metaphorical golden ticket to enlightenment, and more like winning the lottery only to discover you're allergic to money. And let's not forget the humor in the whole "I couldn't find you, so I hid" situation, which is basically just an early draft of every cheesy rom-com where the guy can't figure out how to confess his feelings. As we embark on this whimsical journey through the Garden of Eden, we'll quietly observe the bizarre antics of a couple awkwardly navigating their newfound status as humanity's first parents. Spoiler alert, they don't exactly get it right on the first try. This documentary promises a gentle retelling that will lull you into a state of blissful sleep, because who wouldn't want to snooze through the ancient origins of existential dread and knowledge-induced chaos? So sit tight, or rather, lie back, as we explore how two naked humans got themselves kicked out of paradise, inadvertently opened the door for relatable embarrassment, and created a lasting legacy that still cracks us up thousands of years later. Get ready for the first sunset in human history, and trust me, you'll cue the mystical music. The time: sometime around 4004 BC, just before the invention of dental floss, but after the first awkward family portrait in history. The place? A well-manicured garden that most historians agree was far too expensive to maintain without a divine gardening contract. The air? A delightful blend of fresh earth, sun-kissed fruit, and the unmistakable hint of impending doom. Welcome to Eden, a picturesque realm that would make any Instagram influencer weep with envy. It's here we find Adam, a man who seems pleased with his lot in life, lounging on a sofa made from the world's softest clouds truly, a game-changer for comfort. And then there's Eve, both the original and quite the overachiever. She is busying herself with a rather problematic apple, which she treats like a food revolution waiting to happen. Now, this is not just any apple. It's rumored to contain the knowledge of good and evil. In practical terms, that's a lot for one little piece of fruit to handle. It's like handing a toddler a loaded gun and saying, "Give this the old college try." The scene crackles with excitement, the way only a first-time bite into forbidden fruit can. In stark contrast to the idyllic beauty, the serpent lurks nearby, having conjured up a marketing strategy that would launch 1,000 clickbait headlines. The fruit guarantees enlightenment, but mentions nothing about registration fees or user agreements. He hisses with a sly grin, eager to educate Eve about the incredible benefits of that shiny red snack. Tension builds as Eve, weighing her options like a seasoned chef contemplating a 5-star recipe, considers indulging in the fruit. What could possibly go wrong? Enter the historical absurdity. Word had it that if you ate this apple, you'd be smarter than your local villagers, which, admittedly, didn't take much given their tendency to mistake rocks for landmarks. While a bird off to the side tries to engage in serious philosophical debate as its own form of performance art, Eve's mind races with paranoia. Would the apple cause her to gain too much wisdom? Would she start quoting Heraclitus at dinner parties? Or worse, what if the initial tummy rumble spiraled into a full-blown existential crisis? She plucks the apple from the tree and takes a bite, expecting clarity, but receiving combat-level chaos instead. Suddenly, glaciers of knowledge crash over her, and in an instant, they realize they're stark naked. It's a revelation that anyone who has ever forgotten to put on pants can empathize with. Instead of an enlightening discussion, they find themselves clashing with metaphysical dilemmas. And how does the serpent react? With a smugness that could rival a modern-day social media guru claiming, "You sought knowledge, and now you're in deep trouble. Welcome to adulthood." In retrospect, all that concern about the fruit wasn't necessary. One apple turned out to be singularly underwhelming in the grand scope of internet knowledge pursuits. Little did they know that soon, humans would be predating their errors on social media, hurting both their reputations and their follower count. So what's the lesson here? Sometimes knowledge comes at a price, like a subscription fee you forgot to cancel after a 7-day trial. Or, better yet, that nothing good ever comes from a suspicious-looking piece of fruit, especially when the snake in the grass has curriculum advisory experience. Picture this. The year is 10,000 BCE. The greenery of Eden luxuriantly abundant, with produce no one has any business eating. The sun rises over a pristine garden, illuminating what can only be described as a culinary paradise. This isn't just a garden, it's a half-eaten buffet of botanical delights. Amongst all this splendor lies the fateful protagonist of our tale, a bowl of enticingly vibrant salad. The atmosphere? Oh, it's bogged down with the smell of ripe figs, fresh herbs, and the distinct scent of impending doom. Birds chirp cheerfully, probably gossiping about 2 particular inhabitants who are way too interested in horticulture for their own good. Those characters? Meet Adam and Eve, a pair of blissfully unaware millennials who literally don't have a clue what carbs are or why anyone would need pants. Tonight, they're flirting with disaster, or more accurately, flirting with the most forbidden salad of all time. That's right, the infamous forbidden fruit. Pour in a dash of irony, the garden's salad consists not of croutons and dressing, but of a glistening apple poised halfway between hunger and catastrophe. What could possibly go wrong? The answer is absolutely everything. Back in Eden, salads were governed by a strict set of ancient vegetable superstitions. For starters, one simply does not approach the fruit without consulting the nearest serpent oracle. And lo and behold, the garden is stocked with a very persuasive snake who's the self-proclaimed life coach of all things edible. "Eat the apple. It'll take you places," he whispers, because who doesn't trust a creature that slithers? Meanwhile, the food rituals were absurdly elaborate. For instance, if Eve wanted to pick a fruit, She had to engage in a complex dance known as the hula of happiness, complete with a series of twirls designed to harmonize the vibes of nature. Meanwhile, Adam must sit back and ponder the philosophical implications of every fruit in existence, which leads to a firm grip on the apple as he pronounces it as an existential snack. Classic. Tensions soar as Eve prepares for the decisive moment, heart racing. In a scene that John Steinbeck would envy, she holds the apple, poised dramatically as if it's about to reveal the secrets of the universe. At this pivotal point, the snake says, "Go ahead, take a bite. It's just an apple. They do wonders for the skin." But here's the twist. As Eve bites into the apple, instead of a revelation of wisdom, she merely ends up with a mouthful of juice and seeds. Perhaps more devastating than the loss of Eden's innocence is the realization that this fruit is not even organic. The ground shakes, the sky darkens, and they ponder whether it was worth it. Suddenly, in a haze of chaos, Adam picks up an assortment of carrots as if trying to replace the forbidden apple with something from a rabbit's diet, only to find he's now also evicted from paradise. Because, of course, salad politics in Eden are as cutthroat as they come. The bitter irony? The only actual thing they've learned is that snakes are terrible life coaches. So, what's the moral of this ludicrous welcome to paradise? Or is it pandemonium? The year, an unspecified time before time, had a proper name. The location, a spot on the biblical map so idyllic it would make modern-day Instagram influencers weep in envy. Yes, we're at the Garden of Eden, and just beyond the swept pathways of vibrant flora, the air is constitutionally thick with the aroma of raw arrogance and freshly pilfered produce. In the heart of this celestial paradise, we find our protagonist, Eve, the world's first influencer, sporting a leaf ensemble that screams, "I woke up like this," and furiously searching for the perfect angle. Beside her, Adam, looking perpetually confused, is wondering if he left his sandals in the apple grove again. They're preparing to host the first ever dinner party, though the guest list consists of only one individual, the all-knowing snake, who has a penchant for tall tales. The atmosphere? A cacophony of chirping birds and the occasional whisper of divine hypocrisy. The sunlight cascades down through the trees, illuminating the centerpiece of their culinary extravaganza, a single, enticing apple, a true icon of indulgence, nestled among a few zucchini that had fallen off last season's trend. Now, tension brews beneath this simple scene. You see, Eve had heard all the buzzing gossip from the grapevine, literal grapevine, and the latest rumor was that this particular apple could elevate one's social status, divine influence chic, if you will. Little did she appreciate that this would not only breach dietary restrictions but also violate a rather strict celestial code. The snake, acting as the guest of honor and self-proclaimed food critic, was practically slithering with delight. Why settle for these mundane zucchinis when you can have the wisdom of the ages? He hissed, eyeing the forbidden fruit like a Michelin-starred chef contemplating a 5-star review. Eve hesitates, the orchard's tranquility shattered by the sound of her own heartbeat. What if it's just a really confused apple? She wonders aloud, while Adam, still fumbling around with his leaf belt, chimes in with, what if it's allergic? Not to be outdone by silly speculation, Eve launches into a full-blown existential crisis over whether embracing the apple was an act of empowerment or a one-way ticket to eternal banishment. As the conflict mounts, she picks the apple, only for it to roll away, stopping just short of a standing ovation from the surrounding squirrels. In a flash of divine irony, what was meant to be a simple taste test turned into a frenzy of brain cells misfiring over evolution, free will, and a painfully overanalyzed food choice. The twist? The moment Eve takes a nibble, a vast chorus of ancient botanists appears, a collective gasp echoing through the universe. That's it. It's official. The fruit is not just forbidden, it's absolutely delicious. They all agree, while climbing trees with their clipped notes about morality and gardening tips. And thus, the dinner guests are left hanging on their own appetites and plot lines, with knowledge now cluttering their spirits and morality debated over dinner. Eve shuts that snake down. The moral of our tale, dear viewers: never underestimate the power of an apple, unless you're trying to maintain an organic lifestyle in a paradise where everyone is absolutely naked. Welcome to the illustrious Garden of Eden, circa 4000 BC, or whenever the agrarian calendar decided to get existential. The sun is shining with optimism, so bright that a farmer could probably sell it at the local open market. Birds are chirping, an ambient soundtrack absent of any major conflicts, aside from the odd squabble over fig leaves. Enter our protagonists: Adam, the world's first brooding introvert, and Eve, the rebellious leaf shaker who's just one apple away from absolute anarchy, the pièce de résistance of their paradise, the tree of knowledge, offering fruit that could either enlighten or lead to the downfall of civilization. Talk about a mad gamble on Mother Nature's part. The atmosphere is heavenly, the air thick with the scent of blossoms and slight danger. It's as though one wrong whiff could turn you into an entirely different species. So, naturally, there's tension. The garden feels alive, buzzing with the chatter of potential betrayals and, more importantly, the unsettling crunch of fruit that's off limits. Eve, an expert in botanical enticement, frolics around the tree, her finger twitching dangerously close to a shiny piece of forbidden fruit. Behind her, Adam is busy pondering the philosophical implications of nudity and whether it's worth making pants out of leaves. But the vibe isn't all sunshine and smiles. There's a charmingly paranoid serpent lurking nearby, whispering sweet nothings about knowledge and enlightenment, the kind of things you'd hear at a philosophy major's house party. "You want it, don't you?" hisses the serpent, licking its lips as if it's just found out about a sale on gluten-free snacks. You could know everything, including the correct way to root for the Chicago Bears. Plus, it's organic. As Eve's resolve falters, she contemplates the implications of grouping bad fruit with good intentions. Surely a bite couldn't hurt? After all, that's not a fruit salad, it's an existential buffet. With a cautious glance at Adam, who's now engaged in a deep debate with an unseen cosmic force, she takes the plunge and sinks her teeth into the tantalizing treat. In that moment, something snaps. Knowledge floods through her, and Eve realizes she still has to deal with Adam's laundry. But just as the chaotic revelations begin, a low rumble starts, leaves tremble, and God himself reassesses his hospitality policy. Does Eve fall into a revelatory epiphany? Nope. Instead, the ground splits apart, and suddenly, paradise is crawling with apples and disapproving deities who are now tasked with delivering consequences, much to the delight of that snake, who's probably getting paid commission on this conspiracy. As judgment descends, Adam gazes at Eve with a mixture of awe and mild annoyance. "You're not just creative, are you?" he asks, now seeing the finer grains of hypocrisy in their leafy utopia. And in the end, we realize the fruit wasn't the problem. It was the making of bad life choices on a diet of sheer naivety mixed with a sprinkle of cursed ambition. So, what's the take-home message? Knowledge can be enlightening, but maybe leave the fruit picking to the experts, or at least the self-help authors. Otherwise, you might just end up in a less-than-ideal dress code and an eternity of existential dread. Picture this: the lush Garden of Eden, circa the dawn of humanity, a veritable paradise where the only things more cultivated than the crops were the divine misunderstandings. The time? Right after creation, because why waste time with bureaucracy? The place? An exceedingly picturesque garden that looks suspiciously like a set designer's daydream, complete with fluffy white clouds and ambient flute music. The air is fragrant, not with modern-day lavender, but with the subtle scent of ripe fruit and an unmistakable hint of impending scandal. Enter Eve, the original influencer. She's not just any woman. She's the woman who would single-handedly change the fate of mankind, all while sporting a fashionable leaf ensemble. Next to her stands Adam, having the courage of a man who claims he had nothing to do with the whole creation process, but is really in charge of naming every animal, helping them through their existential crises one at a time. The pièce de résistance? A tree so gloriously laden with apples that even a modern-day Instagram filter would do a double take. However, beneath the glittery sheen of this botanical wonderland lies the crux of the problem. There's a rule: don't eat the forbidden apple. Irony, wrapped in fruity skin. Tension begins to build like a poorly inflated balloon when Eve, the curious rebel, approaches the infamous apple tree. Adam sits beneath it, pretending to focus on his leaf-rustling studies. He's clearly getting distracted by Eve's ambitious exploration of culinary possibilities. Meanwhile, the serpent, a snake whose resume reads tempter of the first transgressor, lounges on a branch, quietly plotting the kind of food-related chaos that would make any reality TV chef proud. As Eve engages in an intense debate with the snake over the merits of the apple versus the avocados sprouting nearby, the serpent unleashes its true power: persuasive rhetoric. Why, by all means, Eve? Who needs boundaries when you can have knowledge? Besides, think of the hashtags. Forbidden fruit sounds totally on brand. The tension rises with each flick of the serpent's tail as they discuss concerns over whether the apple is organic or just a GMO disaster waiting to happen. But let's not overlook Adam, now visibly sweating under the pressure of being the good guy and doing what he thinks God wants, as though he had a direct hotline to the Almighty. Both he and Eve engage in typical couple banter, her asking, "What's your stance on freedom versus divine order?" and him stuttering, aren't we supposed to keep those commandments?" And then it happens. Eve takes a bite. Adam gasps so loud that a nearby ostrich nearly drops its eggs in shock, and suddenly, this peaceful garden turns into the world's first tragicomedy. Eve, with a mouth stuffed full of apple, gazes raptly at Adam, determining whether she should offer him a taste or send him an epic fail ghosted card. Finally, Adam can't resist the fruit's siren call. He joins in the forbidden crunch, leading to what would soon escalate into the first showdown against the fig leaf fashion police. With both having tasted the fruit, chaos reigns. They develop self-awareness, don leaves, and suddenly start arguing about existential philosophies that no one had taught them in Divine College. Surprise twist? The garden didn't become a hotbed of sin, but rather the world's first culinary competition. Who could cook with these now seminal ingredients without stumbling into heresy? And the historical lesson? Rules are merely suggestions when appetites for knowledge and fancy fruit supersede common sense. So the next time you're eyeing that donut in the office, remember, indulgence can sometimes lead to enlightenment. Q. The Celestial Choirs of Doom. The year, roughly 4000 BC. The setting, a lush, mind-bogglingly perfect garden somewhere on the outskirts of anywhere you've ever heard of. The air? It smells suspiciously of fresh figs and questionable choices. Enter Adam, the only guy in history who could rock a leaf and still look like a snack. Is busy chatting with a serpent who's been spectacularly miscast as a yoga instructor. The fruit of the day? One shiny, perilous apple that looks unnervingly like it just got its Instagram filter applied. Sounds harmless, right? That's what Eve's mom thought before the family potluck. Now, let's set our scene. Golden sunlight filters through trees so verdant that even the birds are doing double takes, their melodic chirps giving way to a soundtrack of impending mischief. Adam is trying to decide if the apple is dinner, dessert, or merely a distraction to keep him from his daily chore of naming all the animals but somehow still ignoring the sloths. Eve strolls in, looking fabulous as usual, and there it sits, the forbidden apple, perched delectably on a branch like it just completed a boudoir photo shoot for the garden's annual produce showcase. However, there is more lurking beneath the surface, something as shadowy as daily gossip in the heavenly realm. Let's dive into the juicy tension swirling around this oracular orb of fruit. Eve had heard whispers, or perhaps it was just the wind mimicking her exasperation with Adam's mundane banter. A certain otherworldly gossip had made it her mission to spread doubt among the flora, cackling about the apple's magical properties. This wasn't just a snack. It was a grand ticket out of the humdrum, or so they thought. Rituals danced around this fabled fruit. The local wildlife convened to perform an ancient rite, chanting, "The apple of knowledge," as squirrels scurried, shadows lengthened, and the forest twitched with excitement. They believed the eaters of the fruit would inherit wisdom, or instant regret, depending on how spicy your appetite for catastrophe was. And let's be real, what sounds more enticing than an instant wisdom? I mean, talk about a dangerous combo. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of hangry waiting, the apple spoke. At least it felt like it did. Adam's dramatically overloaded brain began racing with thoughts of free will. He reached for it with a combination of trepidation and unwavering optimism, like a kid in a candy store who suddenly realizes the store is actually on fire. And there it happened, the twist. As Eve and Adam sank their teeth into the apple, the reality of knowledge descended. Instead of ricocheting off the walls in cosmically good vibrations, they learned how to feel shame faster than light. In shock, they found themselves taking wildly inappropriate family portraits as they frantically scrambled for fig leaves, which, spoiler alert, were not happy about the whole situation. So, as they rushed behind an oversized bush, panicking about their instincts, was this wisdom or just a really bad trip? The garden was left forever changed, with serpents gaining a solid reputation as fitness gurus and apples marking the beginning of a never-ending diet dilemma. Morale of the story? Sometimes the path to enlightenment comes with a side of anxiety and fruit that truly bites back. So, next time you reach for a snack, just remember, sometimes ignorance is delicious. Tucked away in a lush corner of the Middle East, somewhere around 4000 BCE, give or take a few thousand berries, lies the infamous Garden of Eden. A paradise so unbothered by Wi-Fi issues that Adam and Eve have more time for apple picking than Instagramming their brunch. But let's be honest, this garden is not just about serene landscapes and unconventional fruit choices. It's the original battleground for humanity's first food crisis. Picture this. The sun is shining at an uncomfortable angle. The air is thick with the scent of ripe fruit and existential dread. As two of our main characters, Adam and Eve, are experiencing that stage of early relationship angst we all can relate to. The sound of rustling leaves complements the tension, alongside the occasional suspicious glance at the all-knowing serpent in the corner who looks suspiciously like your friend with too much advice. What are they fighting about? The fruit. Naturally, it's not just any old fruit, it's the tantalizingly forbidden apple, hanging from the tree of knowledge like a not-so-subtle reminder that ignorance is bliss, and that sometimes curiosity literally kills the cat, or, in this case, the first couple. Adam is not keen on the idea of Eve indulging in the tempting offering of knowledge, and for a good reason. He's still trying to wrap his head around concepts like work and pants. As eager as a toddler in a candy store, Eve gazes longingly at the apple, convinced that it promises enlightenment and maybe a more fulfilling life devoid of overgrown garden duties. Adam's protests grow louder, not out of moral concern, but from a competitive spirit that screams, "Let's not threaten our idyllic lifestyle with knowledge, babe." Tension reaches its peak. They try to establish which of them carries the most existential weight, with Adam citing the couple's earliest discussions about staying away from that tree, while Eve counters with the classic, "But it looks so delicious." And what do you really know about existentialism anyway? Just as Eve's hand reaches out, the serpent chimes in, offering unsolicited advice like a scaly life coach. With every cryptic word, the serene atmosphere of Eden transforms into a soap opera packed with dramatic irony. "You won't die, you'll just know things," it hisses. Priorities are set aside as Eve takes a bite, plunging humanity into chaos and also into fruit flies. What follows is a whirlwind of chaos. Adam plays it cool for a moment, before panicking and yelling, "You've ruined it for us all," fully assuming that his salad days are about to be replaced with conflicting emotional baggage and labor in the fields. Then, the great apple fallout begins. They scramble to hide from God, stylishly blaming each other for their newfound knowledge and awkwardly trying to avoid adulthood's responsibilities. The twist? The age-old belief that knowledge leads to suffering is upheld. Within minutes of biting into the apple, they become way too aware of the laundry list of chores they have ahead. Eve thinks twice about snacking, Why would I want to question the universe when my garden is basically about to turn into a produce apocalypse? History lesson: that apple is believed to represent knowledge, temptation, and the beginning of all Christian woes. It's a hot topic, but let's take a moment to appreciate how, in the quest for enlightenment, the two managed to throw away paradise and bring about the world's first food fight. The projection of their failures onto an innocent piece of fruit. So what's the takeaway? Next time you feel tempted, just remember, cue the heavenly choir. The year, somewhere around 4004 BC. The setting? A garden so lush it could have served as an influencer's dream vacation spot. The problem? The air is ripe with the smell of something sinister. Fresh apples invitingly doused in the aroma of divine mischief. Enter our protagonists, Adam and Eve, the original power couple. Their everyday life? Shocking. It's primarily spending time pondering their existence and trying to remember whether the lone rule of the garden is don't touch the fruit, or do touch, but only if you're really, really curious. A noble endeavor, for sure. And what was for dinner? An enchanting bowl of ambrosia, partnered with salade de pommes, because who wouldn't enjoy greens while contemplating one's creation? Now, in theory, apples are harmless. In practice, however, well, that depends on whether you're Eve and just how bored you are with perfection. Picture this. The couple walks hand in hand through their garden paradise, blissfully unaware of the chaos that swirls around the juicy red apple that Bob, the talking serpent, arguably the garden's worst-kept secret, has been peddling as the next big influencer trend. "Eat the fruit," he hisses with masterful persuasion, utterly oblivious to common sense and, yawn, consequences. Now, here's where the tension kicks in. Every egg at noon, Eve and Adam engage in a ritualistic outdoor yoga session, blissfully namasteing under the shimmering leaves. But there's something more sinister at play. A burgeoning curiosity about that forbidden fruit. You'd think it was a national secret worth 1,000 wars. Meanwhile, the serpent has been throwing subtle hints. Picture him lounging by the apple tree with a goatee and a marketing degree. Why not seize the day? This is the first and only reality show you'll ever be on. He quotes nibbled passages from the Book of Everything, a little pamphlet he swiped from the noon yoga session. As the tension builds, Adam plays it safe, clutching his Garden of Eden wellness plan while looking wistfully at the apple tree. What if the apple is better? Eve smirks, contemplating divine commentary on nutrition, possibly a revised food pyramid where apples claim the top spot. Finally, the tension climaxes when Eve, tired of eternal bliss and green smoothies, decides to indulge her curiosity and, drumroll, please takes a bite of the apple. Meanwhile, Adam looks on in horror as Eve blissfully snacks, not realizing she's just stepped into the biggest plot twist since the invention of the wheel. All of a sudden, nudity becomes unfashionable, and fig leaves are in. Turns out, it's not the apple that has blown up their lives. It's Eve's complete disregard for the no snacks beyond this point sign. But the shocking twist? As Eve bites into the apple, she awakens the knowledge of good and evil. And suddenly, they debate whether it's ethical to wear shame or simply uncomfortable gardens. Cue the sincere groans of the serpent who mutters, Now look what you've done. Not my best angle, folks. After all, when it comes to sin, sometimes all you need is a serpent's sage advice and a bit of curiosity. Picture this. It's approximately 4000 BCE. The setting is a lush paradise known as Eden. Foliage more remarkable than a modern and influencer's feed, and the air is ripe not only with fresh fruits, but also with impending doom. The sounds of placid nature are suddenly disrupted, as overzealous chirping birds begin their symphonic whispering about the tantalizingly forbidden fruit. Yes, folks, here comes the unbelievable drama of the first family cookout. Now, let's hone in on Eve, our trailblazing dame of the story. She's lounging in a hammock of hibiscus, chewing on a pomegranate seed like it's the latest designer lip gloss. Adam, on the other hand, is down by the river, strangely engaged in a lively debate with the resident snake, a creature whose charm exudes double entendre like a Shakespearean seducer. As for the surrounding ambiance, let's just say potent whiffs of honeysuckle and the unmistakable musk of consequence linger in the air, sweetening the tension. The stars of the event? A tree, gloriously plump with apples, each gleaming like a rogue jewel in a sea of green. But hold on, these aren't ordinary fruits. According to the eternal narrative, they pack the punch of disaster wrapped in a delightful rind. As the plot unfolds, Eve is unwittingly drawn into a frenzy of committee-backed chaos, with her temptation emanating louder than a broken record. You see, centuries of superstition about eating fruit prevailed. An apple a day keeps the little snake away, being the least plausible of them. Eve's curiosity is the cherry on top of the ludicrous cake. The serpent's smooth-talking sends her spiraling down a rabbit hole of biblical bewilderment. She whispers to Adam, "Come on, it's just an apple. What's the worst that could happen?" Famous last words. Enter the fateful bite. At the very moment she devours the fruit, the world seemingly pauses, a cosmic mic drop captured in a single still frame. The animals stop their grazing. The wind halts. Even the majestic flamingos roll their eyes. With one crunch, Eve condemns humanity to eternal confusion regarding diet plans and good versus evil. As Adam is practically baited into taking his turn, the tension explodes. Imagine the chaos. One bite later, and it's like a divine deadline hits. Panic ensues as they rummage for fig leaves faster than you can say moral dilemma. With Eve's daring culinary exploration leading to sartorial distress and immediate misunderstanding about nudity. Oh, how history gets twisted. In a stunningly ironic twist, what many saw as sin was merely a dietary faux pas. The apple, it turns out, was an actual distraction. It was the first unfortunate consequence of a longing. Not quite a hunger pang, but more of a hunger rattle for knowledge. So much for enlightenment. Remember, sometimes the juiciest bites hold the worst aftertaste, and curiosity may lead to wardrobe malfunction. Zoom in on the Garden of Eden, circa the mysterious beginning of time, where the sun shines eternally, and the local wildlife comprises more snakes than a conspiracy theory meeting. The air is crisp with the aromatic scent of fresh fruit and the constant murmur of primordial gossip. In a clearing bathed in dappled sunlight, two unlikely companions, Adam and Eve, are engaging in the most riveting conversation of their day. The pros and cons of divine garden decor. The atmosphere is filled with vibrant colors, the kind that would make modern Instagram filters weep with envy. There's a gentle rustling of leaves, punctuated occasionally by the ominous hiss of a certain snake who mistakenly thinks he's the fashion icon of the animal kingdom. Meanwhile, the sound of distant, harmonious birdsong provides the perfect soundtrack to what is about to become an infamous day in culinary history. Our protagonists stand before their pièce de résistance, the forbidden fruit. Picture a giant apple that puts everything in the produce section to shame. Glossy, red, and gleaming with temptation, it sways on its branch like it's auditioning for a part in a reality show about bad decisions. But the tension is mounting. There's a palpable sense of impending doom as Eve sways between curiosity and the nagging voice of conformity. What if it's too crunchy, she muses. Adam, ever the cautious one, is contemplating the absolute worst. What if there's a worm? Enter the serpent, slinking in with the subtlety of a used car salesman. He chimes in with promises of enlightenment that could rival the best infomercials. Eat it. You'll be like God. You'll know good and evil. He hisses with the confidence of a man who knows exactly how to upsell his product. As the tension thickens, Adam's imagination runs wild. He envisions a world where he no longer has to handle the delicate task of naming animals. Texas rattlesnake? Some assembly required? He wonders aloud. And what about laundry? Figure that one out without the fruit. The clock ticks down as Eve stretches out her hand, quite dramatically, as if she's auditioning for a Shakespearean tragedy, and plucks the apple from the tree. The earth itself seems to hold its breath. Suddenly, with a theatrical flair, she takes the first bite, and the world as they know it becomes a soap opera-level disaster. In a shocking twist signifying that this snack is not your average post-workout snack, chaos erupts. Leaves flutter dramatically, as if they also disapprove of this impromptu culinary experiment. Adam tries to convince Eve that there's still time to throw the apple away, but it's too late. The fruit has already struck the match on their primally convenient lives. Historical context? Here's a tidbit. Despite the somber interpretations, the apple has been a staple in symbolism since antiquity, representing both knowledge and ludicrous choices, much like all those hasty decisions made after passing the cereal aisle. So here's the moral of the story. Never trust a snack that promises enlightenment. It might just lead you to be the first ever victim of foodborne existential dread. Cut to the lush, green paradise of Eden, around 4000 BCE, a time before dry cleaning and dietary restrictions. The lighting is dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves, mingling with a faint yet pungent aroma of damp soil and overripe figs. Amidst this backdrop, we open on Eve, the ultimate overachiever in the world of garden planning, her hands deep in the dirt, and her wardrobe a daring mix of fig leaves and irreverent confidence. Center stage, a tree so majestic it could have moonlight dances held under it, boasting fruits that shine like nature's guilty secrets, the famed apples. Yes, they're not just any apples. These crispy orbs of temptation are considered the cause of the original oops moment. As the camera pans to Adam, our hapless hero, he's lounging against a rock, whose only function seems to be existing while Eve does all the heavy lifting. He's munching on a perfectly balanced cosmic diet of nuts and berries, completely unbothered by the monumental task of garden maintenance. Little does he know that his daydreaming might just lead to humanity's first existential crisis. The tension ramps up as we watch Eve eye those shiny apples with the intensity one might reserve for a winning lottery ticket in a recession. Around them, various animals, a snake with a suspiciously persuasive attitude, a lion clearly auditioning for a reality show, offer unsolicited advice. The snake hisses its supposed wisdom, suggesting that perhaps those apples hold the key to enlightenment, or possibly just an alarming number of calories. Either way, it's a pitch destined to be legendary. Then in swoops a chorus of angels with pamphlets detailing the do's and don'ts of Eden living, where the first commandment reads, "Thou shalt not eat of the tree of knowledge, but feel free to eat everything else, including the occasional kangaroo." The tension mounts further as Eve's internal monologue plays out. Should she or should she not eat the fruit? With each frame, the snake's dubious charm grows, and the apples seem to sparkle with siren-like allure, promising knowledge, and perhaps a chronic case of paranoia. In a moment that feels ironically suspended in time, Eve finally takes a bite. The world gasps. Adam drops his nut. And, in a shocking twist of fate, the apple tastes like, well, apple. No complex flavors or transcendent revelations, just a bizarrely familiar crunch. The camera zooms in on Eve's face that slowly transitions from excitement to slight disappointment. Who knew the secret to the universe was just a fruit that had been improperly classified on a grocery list? Cue the chaos as both take bites and discover their newfound awareness, not of the universe's mysteries, but of every embarrassing thing they ever did, including the time Adam mistook a leaf for a handkerchief during a family portrait, now immortalized as eternal disgrace. The implications spiraled like a broken record. They were naked, both literally and metaphorically, shaking with revelations that weren't even on their radar before. And there it is, the humor in it all. Knowledge didn't make them wiser, just awkward and hyper-aware of their humanity. So what's the takeaway? Sometimes, the juiciest fruit brings about the most ridiculous fall from grace. In the end, remember, you might not want to peek behind the curtain of knowledge if all you find is an endless supply of embarrassing stories. Cue the epic, dramatic music. The year, approximately 4000 BC. The place, a perfectly manicured garden in ancient Mesopotamia, lush, poetic, and probably in desperate need of a good pest control service. The atmosphere, a delicate blend of floral aromas, the suspiciously sweet scent of forbidden fruit, and just a hint of divine tension lingering in the air. Enter Eve. No, not the Hollywood starlet, the original one, clearly in need of a better wardrobe advisor than a fig leaf. Meanwhile, Adam lounges around, blissfully contemplating his role as the world's first couch potato, proving that some things really don't change over millennia. Their primary concern? What to name the creatures of Eden, but most importantly, how to avoid getting lured into a conversation with an actual serpent. As Eve strolls through the garden, she's hit by the incredible allure of one particular tree. Let's call it the Tree of Trouble. Its fruit gleamed ominously, like the latest new gadget from a tech company that just screamed "buy me" or "regret it." Naturally, knowing it was forbidden made it simply irresistible. Nothing screams dinner party conversation starter like an illicit snack. Now, let's set the stage for this impending snack attack. The sunlight filters through the leaves, creating a dappled effect that's equal parts enchanting and Instagram-worthy. The birds chirp, blissfully unaware that they're about to witness humanity's biggest culinary faux pas. And while squirrels debate over acorn stalks, Eve is already calculating the risks, primarily what a serpent might say to convince her to take a bite. The comedic tension escalates when the sly serpent slithers onto the scene. He's the kind of guy you wouldn't want at your dinner table. Overly charming, slick talker with a penchant for persuasion. "Hey, Eve," he hisses. "Ever tried a bit of this fruit? It's the bomb.com and, it'll open your mind. Forget that boring 'don't eat' sign." Eve, caught in an existential crisis fueled by incessant FOMO, weighs her options. Stay within the confines of a garden where the most scandalous treat is a coconut, or plunge headfirst into culinary chaos. The pressure mounts as she imagines the life of a food critic in paradise, personally reviewing the Edenic Eats platter. In a moment of intense dodging of every dietary warning label in the universe, Eve takes a bite. Cue heavenly lights, a dramatic score, and perhaps the first use of the phrase "you've just made the biggest mistake of your life." Adam runs over, looking like someone just told him his Wi-Fi is out. The twist? The fruit doesn't deliver on any of its promises of enlightenment. Instead, it brings cheesy family drama, awkward confrontations, and a one-way ticket out of paradise. Suddenly, the blissful couple is wielding pitchforks of existential dread. Is there a warranty on this whole free will thing? As they're booted from the gate, the serpent, with a smirk wider than the Garden of Eden itself, quietly retreats, laughing all the way to the next divine drug deal. Now, if you think about it, humanity's first foray into gourmet cuisine really gave the term dinner and regret a brand new context. So, what's the moral of our Edenic escapade? Always read the fine print before biting into the forbidden apple, because sometimes that's just a recipe for eviction from paradise. It's a bright and sunny day, or it will be if you squint hard enough at the glimmering sun that's probably just a glorified lamp hanging from a tree branch. The year is an unrecorded early humanish time frame, somewhere between the Stone Age and Netflix. Welcome to the Garden of Eden, the original paradise under questionable management, featuring all the organic apples you can handle and absolutely no signs of sanitation regulations. The atmosphere? A sensory overload of petrichor, ripe fruits, and a hint of something foul that might just be that leftover mammoth stew from last week. Birds are chirping cheerfully. Adam and Eve, our unsuspecting protagonists, amble amidst the flora, feeling good about life in humanity's first suburban backyard. Spoiler, they have no idea what's coming. Here we have Adam, looking quite imposing despite being made of dirt and clay, sporting an unfortunate case of fig leaves that seem to work harder than he does. Eve, on the other hand, is the picture of bliss, blissfully unaware of her role as the first human to face a real sales pitch, delivered by none other than a well-dressed serpent with a questionable amount of charisma and a penchant for seduction. The food front is dominated by apples, shiny and red like they're trying way too hard to win some kind of Edenic beauty contest. In fact, if anyone could give an apple a reality check, it would be Eve. She practically oozes confidence. But there's a little voice in her head just waiting for the right moment to whisper, "Why not, right?" This is where the real tension kicks in. Eve has been told time and again that the fruit of the tree of knowledge is off limits, kind of like the buffet line at a fat camp. Yet here comes that serpent slithering in with the charming line, "You won't die. You'll be like God." No pressure there, just your standard morning temptation backed by a million urges to exercise free will. Suddenly, an apple is more than just a snack. It becomes a symbol of rebellion, enlightenment, and even the idea that sometimes curiosity kills the cat, or, in this case, sends humans spiraling into millennia of guilt. Eve bites the apple, the world spins, and Adam, looking like he just realized he left the oven on, is forced to follow suit. What was once a simple diet has now taken a turn toward existential dread, as they realize this snack was an entire Pandora's box packed with knowledge, shame, and a new and very pressing understanding of their own nudity. So, what's the lesson in all of this? Always read the fine print before indulging in fruity temptations, even if it means choosing between divine ignorance and the tragedy of self-awareness. And remember, a forbidden fruit can lead to great conversations, with therapists, philosophers, and historians alike. Picture this. It's the dawn of humanity, and somewhere amidst lush greenery and a suspiciously well-manicured patch of paradise lies Eden. The air is filled with the sweet scent of innocence and freshly fallen apples, the kind that would make even the most discerning orchard owner burst into tears of joy. And why not? These apples are not just any apples. They are the original forbidden fruit. The first indication that maybe, just maybe, humans should stick to kale. The sun streams through the trees, illuminating the figures of Adam and Eve. Adam, who sports an impeccable physique that could launch 1,000 fitness apps, stands confidently next to Eve, who looks as bewildered by her existence as most of us do on a Monday morning. They have been tasked with the utterly absurd job of tending to the garden. Basically, a glorified backyard with zero maintenance except for a rather large "Do Not Eat" sign attached to the biggest apple tree this side of creation. As for the atmosphere, it could only be described as a Garden of Eden-scented candle on steroids. The rich, bloomy aromas of ripe fruits dance with the sweet notes of flowers, while occasional whispers of temptation flutter through the leaves, carried by a gentle breeze that hints at something perilous lurking just behind that tempting tree. Every day, they frolic in this paradise, blissfully unaware that their snack choices would end history as they know it. What are they doing instead? Engaging with some rather bizarre rituals of their own involving fruit appreciation. This included Adam attempting to name every leaf and flower, while Eve declares one of the apples the one with the most celebrity potential. Meanwhile, a serpent, sulking in the underbrush, feels a pang of existential dread because, honestly, no one likes to be the bad guy in the story. He overhears them, takes notes on their bizarre fruit rituals, and hatches a plan. In his mind, convincing Eve to munch on an apple would not only break the monotony of their fruit repertoire, but also send shockwaves through the cosmos. One day, amidst the ongoing debates on whether bananas could be considered a suitable substitute for apples, the serpent slithers up, exuding the kind of charm that could sway even the most committed diet enthusiasts. Why not try this apple? It's like a 5-star Michelin chef in fruit form, he whispers, while spitting a little bit of poison that would become the hallmark of all future salesman pitches. After much back-and-forth banter and an excessive amount of persuasive finger-pointing, Eve succumbs, taking a bite from the sacrilegious apple. The moment she sinks her teeth into the crisp flesh, the world as they knew it collapses into chaos. Cue the celestial trumpets announcing that all hell was about to break loose. What was once a haven turned into a reality where laundry existed and self-responsibility was a thing. They were doomed, all for an apple that was about as harmful as a fruit cup in a school cafeteria. Just think, the great unraveling of human civilization for a curse of a snack. Ah, the moral of the story? If an apple a day keeps the doctor away, a forbidden apple throws a wrench in the whole shebang. In conclusion, the next time someone offers you a fruit that carries a historical price tag, maybe just picture this: the dawn of humanity, a pristine paradise called Eden, circa the absurdly optimistic timeline of around 4000 BC. Now, imagine a lush garden with more vibrant foliage than a modern-day Instagram influencer's bedroom. The smell? A mix of honeysuckle, fresh dew, and the ever-looming scent of impending hubris. And it's here, beneath the branches of the fabled tree, that our protagonists, Adam and Eve, a couple more naive than a pair of recent college grads, find themselves at the center of the world's most historical food dispute. Yes, folks, the forbidden fruit. But not just any fruit, it's an apple, because nothing says ultimate temptation like a crisp piece of fruit that's one bad decision away from launching civilization into chaos. The first couple, innocent yet oddly curious, stand gazing at this enchanting, glistening orb like two starlit romantics contemplating their first kiss. But, oh wait, here comes the serpent. And no, this isn't just your garden variety snake. He's got the charisma of a slick used car salesman combined with the charm of a manipulative philosopher. Why resist? He hisses. It's basically a snack-sized ticket to enlightenment. Plus, you can totally brag to your friends about knowing the mind of God. Talk about influencer goals. Amid the serenading of chirping birds and the gentle rustling of leaves, cutting-edge sound design. Mind you, Eve, with the grace of someone choosing between a salad and fries at dinner, reaches for the fruit. The atmosphere thickens. Birds fly suddenly silent. An unholy tension fills the air, and the trees seem to lean in to witness this momentous decision. Will she bite the apple or let it go, a mere footnote in the history of mankind? And what an unnecessary build-up it is. Throw in rituals from sitting cross-legged under the tree to incantations about the ethics of eating fruit. Adam might as well have rolled out a yoga mat and lit some incense. Then, like a tragic play, she takes the bite. Cue dramatic music and the sound of jaws dropping, not just Eve's. Suddenly, knowledge flows through them like a tidal wave of questionable choices. But here's where it gets tragically hilarious. They discover that eating the apple doesn't just grant them knowledge. It unleashes an avalanche of bureaucracy, feelings of shame, and, gasp, clothes. Because apparently, the first rule of being a civilized human is to wear pants. Who knew? Once the apple is consumed, there's chaos in Eden. God shows up after what seems like a long, unhurried coffee break, and, let's just say, he's not thrilled. The serpent, now a cosmic scapegoat, slithers away with the indifference of someone who just started a rumor, and is now lounging in a hammock. Coupled with an existential crisis, Adam and Eve find themselves exiled from paradise, contemplating their next meal plan in a world that now has both food and heartbreak. Now for the historical context. The story of Eve's snack has been interpreted in countless ways, from a cautionary tale about curiosity to a slight on the dietary choices of humanity. But let's not forget, it took just one apple and a smooth talker to reshape the course of history. So, what do we learn from this mythology of munching? When in doubt, stick to bananas. They don't come with a side of curses. Welcome back to our tongue-in-cheek exploration of the Garden of Eden, circa 4004 BC, where nothing says serene paradise like two humans, a talking snake, and a generous serving of existential angst. The setting: a lush garden brimming with plush foliage, fragrant blooms, and the unmistakable scent of celestial convenience. Think fresh dew mixed with a hint of apple pie, courtesy of our favorite metaphorical fruit. Enter Adam and Eve, the original power couple, clad in nothing but foliage and naivete. Adam, a rugged yet oblivious garden enthusiast, has just discovered a peculiar apple tree, not to be confused with the one that later spawned a billion-dollar tech empire. Eve, the curious feminist at heart, dabbles in primordial horticulture, dreaming of a world beyond the reach of God's pulpit, or, in this case, a rather cranky deity who's apparently just trying to keep it all organic. The atmosphere? Oh, just a whimsical cacophony of chirping crickets, splashy water features, and your occasional judgmental cloud. The sound of a snake's sibilant whispers underscores the absurdity. No, not just any snake, but the snake, keen on revolutionizing Eve's snack options. And the epicenter of this cosmic calamity? One luscious, shimmering apple, radiating temptation like a spotlight on a Broadway star. As Eve examines the fruit, the tension climaxes. What's the worst that could happen, she wonders, glancing at Adam, who is blissfully distracted by his attempts to name the local wildlife. Unknown to her, that self-same apple is essentially a ticket to a metaphysical roller coaster, with guilt, shame, and an unwanted awareness thrown in for good measure. Picture this. Eve gingerly approaches, mustering the courage that only the promise of a bite-sized revelation can inspire. But before the bite, oh boy, the pre-bite ritual. Eve clutches the apple. "Shall I?" she muses, citing old wisdom about fruits not bearing deceitful skins, all while fully ignoring the unsolicited instructions she got from above. Meanwhile, the snake, her newfound culinary consultant, simply coos sweet nothings that would make any PR representative proud. Eat it for enlightenment. It was a classic PR move from the roots of evil. The climax arrives when Eve bites into the apple. And wait, cue the lightning. The skies darken. A booming voice declares, "What have you done?" As if the Almighty had a direct line of communication with those heinously rebellious taste buds. Adam, realizing he's just been given a crash course in cosmic consequences, snags the apple and takes a bite, because nothing says couples therapy like mutual destruction. And what happens next? Surprise! They suddenly gain awareness. The world around them explodes in vivid color. Or maybe it's just the after effects of organic-induced hysteria. Either way, they spot each other's fig leaves and think, "Ah yes, modesty is a thing now. Dear Lord, we are naked. In a twist worthy of any soap opera, they realize that eating the apple didn't bring them enlightenment, but rather a massive existential hangover. And thus, mankind is launched into a realm of being both hilariously aware, yet tragically confused. So as we wrap this segment, let's all take a lesson from Eve. If a slippery snake offers you snacks, it's usually not complimentary, and sometimes curiosity can come with a side of banishment. Picture this: the idyllic Garden of Eden, circa creation, bustling with flora so lavish they'd make a Victorian greenhouse look like a brick shed. The sun is shining, a gentle breeze rustles the leaves, and the scent of ripe figs hangs thick in the air. Oh, the irony! We find ourselves on a fateful day as God and his newest creations, Adam and Eve, contemplate their lunch options. One can only wonder how a perfectly nutritious fig could become the catalyst for humanity's greatest blunder. The atmosphere? Warm and a little too sweet, with a dash of existential dread that even the wildlife can sense. Birds chirp songs of innocence, while a snake slithers nearby, clearly looking to snag a slice of the action. And there's Adam, ruggedly handsome and blissfully unaware, while Eve, on the other hand, has a more curious gleam in her eye. They are presented with the day's special, the forbidden fruit. Yes, that same fruit always depicted as an apple, but today, let's imagine it's actually a fig, because who doesn't love a twist of irony? As Eve reaches out, we can practically hear the collective gasp of 1,000 generations echoing through time, every religious scholar sitting on the edge of their seats. The tension builds as she digs into that juicy seed-filled core, introducing a dish not just filled with flavor, but with historical ramifications that would make future world leaders envious. But why, you ask, does a fig feel so much more perilous than any other fruit? In Eden, there were rituals, bizarre ones. Every fruit had its own sacred chant, and for figs, it went something like this: O great fig of wisdom, bestow upon me knowledge, but not the kind that causes strife among humankind. The giggles of the other animals only added to the absurdity as creatures half jumped, half rolled in laughter at the impending doom. Now, consider this. As Eve relishes the sweetness of rebellion, we zoom into the panic unfolding in the bushes. A nearby squirrel, who had been collecting nuts for the winter, realizes that the fig is drawing the attention of the devil, also known as just your average sneaky snake. The paranoia sets in as squirrels start to whisper about fig counterfeits and errant seed spreaders threatening their local ecosystem. This culminates in a dramatic showdown with Eve as she defiantly holds up the fig, daring anyone to challenge her right to snacking. Serpentine fangs be damned. Suddenly, God re-enters the scene, and in a twist akin to the worst slapstick comedy, he doesn't see Eve's fig of wisdom. No, he believes she's just found a ball of yarn. Oh dear, you've discovered the art of knitting, he exclaims. The situation escalates as Eve tries to explain the fig, a delicious fruit, not a crafty feline delight, but alas, it's too late. The whole fall from grace and sorrowful separation, all triggered by a misunderstanding more absurd than a sitcom plot. And thus we arrive at the punchline. While one fig could have changed the course of humanity into a reality show filled with plush toys, it instead ended with them being kicked out of paradise, all for a fruit that sounds suspiciously like a warm hug. So remember, next time you hit the grocery store, think twice before. Picture this: the Garden of Eden, circa who knows when, adorned with blissful greenery and an atmosphere so serene it could give a yoga retreat in digestion. It's a fine morning, the sun is shining, the birds are chirping, and all the animals are contributing to a symphony of natural bliss. Yet, spot a glimmer of mischief among the perfection, because right smack dab in the center is a tree bearing fruit that supposedly holds the key to all knowledge. Yes, folks, who wouldn't want to munch on the entire universe's secrets wrapped in a juicy little package? Enter Adam and Eve, the first couple of culinary experimentation. Barefoot and blissfully ignorant, their lives are saturated with the luxurious aroma of freshly ripened fruits and the sweet scent of naive ambition. No grocery lists, no snack search engines, just a yearning for something they can't quite name. And what's that in the distance? A sassy serpent, glistening and cooler than an avocado on toast, twisting around the base of the tree, likely just looking for its moment of internet fame. But let's get to the juicy bit: the fruit. On one hand, the mother of all snacks, a seemingly harmless apple, though we're almost certain it was organic. On the other hand, the subtle "no, you can't have that" glimmer of divine edict. What could be more enticing than something everyone says you can't have? A delightful recipe for trouble, if you ask any teenage heartthrob. Now let's unpack this. Eating the forbidden fruit isn't merely a culinary adventure. It's the ultimate act of rebellion against an overlord with zero sense of humor. Talk about pressure. Adam and Eve had to follow a divine diet with absolutely no cheat day in sight. Every munch on anything else came with a side of, "Hey, you could have that knowledge, but at what cost?" The serpent, being the charming manipulator that it is, slithers in with a wink and a conspiratorial whisper about the wisdom that comes slipping into their jaws. A peddler of pasta recipes? A maestro of monkey business? No, just a serpent in the trees. The underappreciated influencer of the ancient gastronomical social scene. And then the unthinkable happens. Eve, emboldened by the serpent's banter and perhaps a touch of instant karma, takes a bite. One crunchy crunch later, Adam is in a moral quandary. Follow suit or keep munching on the candied melon? Spoiler alert, it was a no-brainer. One apple bite into the cosmos of consciousness and boom, humanity unveils itself. Trouble ensues. They're not just exposed to knowledge, but a buffet of existential dread and guilt. Suddenly, they realize they're naked, not just of clothes, but of foolish innocence. Cue the darting eyes, the panicked whispers, and a rapid search for leaves to protect their dignity as they scramble for some semblance of decorum that even Tarzan would envy. So, what did we learn today? Moral of the story? When life gives you luscious fruits and the opportunity to taste forbidden knowledge, first check if that piece of information comes with a side of shame and eternal consequences. Or maybe just stick with the berries, avoid the drama, and consider Q, the whimsical harp music. The year, roughly 4004 BC. The scene, a lush garden that would make even the fanciest botanical gardens in the modern age take a long, hard look in the mirror. The air, infused with the tantalizing scent of ripe fruit, the gentle rustling of leaves whispering secrets of vine, and a background score of various animal sounds, all strangely reminiscent of a bad nature documentary. Enter Adam and Eve, the first couple in history, yet already in a relationship so old it makes your grandparents look like newlyweds. They roam about, blissfully unaware that their decisions would later inspire countless heated debates and mildly awkward theological discussions. Today, however, they're not just here to enjoy nature's bounty, they're here to snack, and boy, do they have an impressive selection. Their eyes land on the piece de resistance, the forbidden fruit. Its skin glistens in the sunlight, so pristine it could double as a mirror for checking one's reflection. And what is that delicious array of colors? Red, green, with a hint of maybe I shouldn't be eating this. As soon as the first bite is taken, the atmosphere changes. Gone are the peaceful birdsong and the serene rustle of the leaves. Instead, we hear a collective gasp from the entire animal kingdom. Even the snakes freeze mid-shed. Here comes the tension. Around the garden, a bizarre ritual commences. The local wildlife begins to scatter into a panic as they concoct all sorts of wild superstitions about this fruit. "Better watch your back, Adam. That fruit's got ill intentions," the squirrel declares. "First the fruit, then world domination," the rabbit adds, clearly taking inspiration from the nearest animated series. Meanwhile, the serpent, dressed in what can only be described as biblical chic, slithers in, murmuring things like, "Look how shiny it is. Why not try it and maybe enjoy a side of existential dread this afternoon?" The tension mounts as Eve, now caught in a whirlwind of curiosity and a hint of peer pressure, decides to take the plunge. Just as she bites into the fruit and relishes its taste, a thunderous voice booms from above. "What are you doing? It's God, and He is absolutely done with this scene." The atmosphere goes from casual bliss to pure chaos in under a second. Adam, who was just enjoying the fruit like it was a free buffet, chokes on his bite, while Eve dramatically spits out her piece as if it were hot lava. In a twist even the best sitcom writers would envy, it turns out the fruit wasn't inherently evil. It was merely a seedling of overreaction. Adam then looks at Eve, laughing nervously. So we presumed an apple would finish us. Instead, we started an eternity of agriculture and hard labor. In one fell swoop, they unwittingly create history's first myth. And thus the temptation was not just a pluck of fruit, but the beginning of humanity's most illustrious hiccup. Send everyone into a spiral that would last for centuries, and set up a rather long lineage of continuing to eat forbidden snacks. So what did we learn? When it comes to the Garden of Eden, it's fruit that starts more than just a craving. It kicks off a millennium of confusion and a few noticeably awkward family reunions. Picture this. It's around 4000 BC, and the sun is shining brighter than the checkered past of any politician. The Garden of Eden, a lush oasis nestled between two rivers, smells of fresh fruit and nagging perfectionism. The air is alive with the chirping of preposterously talented birds, whose vocal skills would put any modern-day pop star to shame. And at the heart of it all, a delectable apple, glistening in the sunlight like a golden ticket to a reality show meltdown, rests ominously atop a smooth stone pedestal. Enter Eve, the original influencer, with a gaze so piercing it could motivate even a snake to obtain a business degree. Beside her stands Adam, wearing nothing but his embarrassment and a fig leaf that's clearly one size too small. They were having a perfectly ordinary day practicing their usual routine of naming animals and pulling apples from trees when, suddenly, a snake slithers in. Let's call him Mr. Slither, an actual snake with aspirations to be the next big thing in myth-making, thanks to his newly acquired seduction skills. The atmosphere? Tension hangs thicker than the mist over the garden. Sweet fragrances of overripe nectarines mingle with the whiff of impending doom. Whispers of a lunch that shouldn't happen mix with rustling leaves, giving a hint of the chaos about to unfold. You know, Mr. Slither hisses with an air of nonchalance that can't help but drip with sarcasm. Eating that apple will transform your life. I mean, who doesn't want to gain knowledge and get kicked out of the paradise? Sounds like a win-win, if you ask me. Eve's eyes gleam with curiosity, while Adam, clueless as always, raises an eyebrow that silently asks, "Wasn't our current situation perfect?" To which Eve retorts in her best dramatic fashion, "Perfect, schmerfect. Have you tasted one of these apples? I hear they're the best in the universe." In a Herculean clash of wills reminiscent of a couple who can't decide where to eat dinner, Eve takes a long, seductive bite of the forbidden fruit, a decision so bad it would later be analyzed in therapy sessions for millennia to come. A few moments pass, the sky darkens, the birds stop chirping. Kevin, the garden gnome, tips his hat in disbelief, and then absolute silence. Adam watches in horror as Eve munches away, glances at the apple, then at Mr. Slither, who winks like a snake with a hatched president's badge. "What are you waiting for? Join the club of the enlightened," he entices, all charm and danger. Adam relents, takes a bite, and suddenly it's revelations and regrettable decisions all around. So there they are, spare rib and all, suddenly overwhelmed by a rush of omniscience. "Oh, my stars, and naked," Eve gasps, which is both an underwhelming revelation and a truly redundant statement, considering their attire was dictated merely by the whims of horticulture. And here's where the irony deepens. The much-feared fruit of knowledge didn't come with an instruction manual, nor did it prepare them for the aftermath. One moment they were the apple of God's eye, the next they were packing their bags for a one-way trip to mottled earth beyond Eden's gates. Thus, they enter the great outside world, without so much as a brochure for what lay ahead. Lights dim, a soft glow envelops the lush greenery of a primordial paradise. An oddly well-lit garden somewhere around 4000 BC. The scent of ripe figs wafts through the air, mingling with something unidentifiable that seems to be seeping from a nearby swamp. The sounds? Well, it's primarily crickets, because evolution hadn't quite gotten around to sound effects yet. We begin our journey with Adam, the ultimate bachelor, whose sole form of attire consists of strategically placed fig leaves. Next to him, perhaps the most famous rib in history, Eve. She's perched on a rock, balancing an apple in her hand, as if contemplating whether it's a snack or a poor life choice. Ah, love in the Garden of Eden, a tale as old as time, yet potentially highly ill-advised. Now, in this bountiful garden, the food is, of course, a huge deal. The apple, delectable but utterly dangerous, sits smugly on a glimmering branch, calling out to every two-legged, barely civilized being within sight. It's not just any old piece of fruit. It's practically an oozing symbol of temptation, kind of like chocolate cake on a diet. As Eve contemplates the apple, an ominous tension rises like yeast in a loaf of supposedly gluten-free bread. You see, both Adam and Eve had been told that touching or consuming the fruit would be a one-way ticket to existential dread, and possibly a serious case of divine banishment. But let us talk about the quirky rituals surrounding this fabled food. Legend has it that every time someone eyed a fig or apple, there was an ancient curse that warned, "Look not too long, lest ye summon the wrath of your Creator." Just imagine Adam peeking at the apple while meticulously trying to maintain a balance of both desire and dread. His strategy revolved around awkwardly humming and pretending to admire the overall foliage. Perfect picnic, right? Eve, on the other hand, found the apple far more intriguing. Not only was it plump and shiny, but who could resist the idea of becoming the ultimate influencer of their time? With one bite, she could reshape cultural narratives and, oddly enough, get people in a tizzy for generations. Little did she know that her first influencer gig was actually going to turn everyone's lives upside down. And then it happened. Eve, in a moment of utter absurdity, decided to take a bite. Suddenly, animals began speaking in confused English accents while birds hovered, adding commentary as if they were the world's first unsolicited food critics. Adam, horrified to witness what would now be known as an epic dietary faux pas, suddenly found himself mired in a health crisis that involved a lot of backpedaling around the base of that very apple tree. Meanwhile, God, watching down and cropping the universe like an awkward Zoom meeting, gasped, clutching his ceremonial thunderbolts. "Really, Eve? An apple? My first-round pick for healthy choices?" A heavenly banishment ensued, complete with cosmic drama, and the duo was sent packing, leaving the pear-shaped abyss of Eden for eternity. Eventually, the apple was lost to history, while discussions about corruption and metaphors flourished, not to mention endless theological debates over fruit rights. So, cue the melodramatic orchestral score. The year, somewhere in the mythological haze of the dawn of time, a place where the air was thick with the smell of freshly tarred fig leaves and the clumsy innocence of early humanity. Picture this: a vast garden, perfect in its unkempt beauty. Think overgrown charm meets heavenly paradise, all under a spotlight that could only be described as mildly ominous. Enter our protagonists, Adam and Eve, the original influencers. Adam, sporting a modest fig leaf like a trendy accessory from a summer sale, stood perplexed at the sight of his own reflection in a conveniently placed crystal-clear pond. Meanwhile, Eve was busy picking fruits from an unusually stocky apple tree, which, rumors suggested, really should have been a part-time therapist considering the baggage it carried. As birds chirped sweetly and a sneaky serpent slithered by, clearly auditioning for a role in Days of Our Lives Garden Edition, the couple's sense of adventure and impending doom was heightened by the delightful aroma of the forbidden fruit enticing them to partake in a little agricultural rebellion. Ah, the infamous apple, bright, shiny, and seemingly harmless, like that one friend who always suggests karaoke night. But here's the catch. It wasn't just an ordinary piece of fruit. In the Garden of Eden, eating an apple was less about nutrition and more about negotiating with fate. The apples were treated with the utmost reverence. Whispers of oracular prophecies and misgivings floated about like pesky gnats. Legends insisted that one bite could open the floodgates to universal street cred, which, at the time, meant you could overthrow a god or two. The tension began to bubble as Adam and Eve contemplated the delightful dilemma: partake in this delicious sin or continue to enjoy their mundane existence. Imagine the ritualistic precautions. Eve meticulously wiped the apple with a leaf, dousing it in holy water, while Adam stared at it like it was an epic video game challenge featuring a dragon at the end. Then came the classic showdown. Would they dare? With the serpent now pulling neighborhood watch duty and whispering sweet nothings about enlightenment, also known as extra effort on the knowledge front, Eve took the plunge. The apple crunched, resounding like a revolutionary battle cry across the garden. Adam, still weighing the pros and cons and experiencing an existential crisis of unsteady proportions, joined her in the reckless consumption of wisdom. Suddenly, reality kicked in with a punchline sharper than a devilish grin. Their eyes opened wide, and the universe expanded. This apple was, in fact, organic and gluten-free, yet exploded with sensation beyond their wildest dreams. Cue the immediate wardrobe malfunction as the couple discovered that knowledge indeed came at a price: modesty and a deep-seated awareness of their own nudity, prompting an emotional crisis of epic proportions. And there it was, paradise lost, and the philosophers started throwing their theories around like confetti. In the aftermath, Eve heroically became the poster child for exploration of the arts, while Adam attempted to reclaim lost glory by justifying his actions in every cafe debate he could find. So here's the lesson. Even when life hands you forbidden fruit, just remember to check for secrets in the juicy center. Or you might just end up in therapy with the clothing-optional community. A little knowledge goes a long way, especially when it opens Pandora's box of fashion disasters. Imagine, if you will, a balmy afternoon in the mythical Garden of Eden, where the year is dubious, the geography is questionable, and the weather is simply fabulous, perfect for lounging in style. The air is fragrant with the scent of exotic fruits and the possibly existential dread of everything weighing on two unknowing yet inexplicably fashionable humans, Adam and Eve. As we pan through this utopia replete with luscious trees and animals that are still concerned with avoiding their upcoming role in humanity's dark narrative, a key ingredient catches the eye: the infamous forbidden fruit. Yes, the apple, shiny, seductive, and probably also Wi-Fi enabled in this version of reality. Now, the scene is set. Light trickling through the leaves creates a dappled disco ball effect on the grass, while a chorus of chirping birds clinks their tiny glasses together, raising a toast to the soon-to-be chaos. As Adam lounges beneath a particularly promising apple tree, projecting brooding intensity, Eve is juggling a collection of fruit. The one in question is plump and glows as if sponsored by a luxury skincare brand. The tension thickens like oatmeal on a bad morning as Eve fields the unsolicited advice of a very shady serpent. Let's be honest, who has ever invited a snake into their lives and considered it wise? He's hissing sweet nothings that can barely be heard over the melodramatic background music of nature. The serpent coos about knowledge, enlightenment, and all the things that sound great until you realize they end in a one-way ticket to bottomless regret. Eve exchanges nervous glances with Adam, who is more interested in dissecting the contents of the latest butterfly than deciding on some solid life choices. As the serpent showcases his questionable sales pitch, the pastel-colored apple beckons like it's been touched by the gods, or perhaps just a dodgy fruit vendor eager to make a sale. With a dramatic flair worthy of a Shakespearean tragedy, Eve reaches out. What's the worst that could happen, she thinks, echoing every decision ever made that led to tears and regret. The moment she bites into the apple, all hell breaks loose. And by hell, we mean embarrassment, confusion, and the abrupt stripping away of their leaf outfits. Surprisingly, the dance of horror that ensues of recognizing they're suddenly the proud owners of very human vulnerabilities is interrupted by the absurdity of their new bureaucratic situation. Fig Leaves Incorporated. Yes. Suddenly, Adam and Eve are now smug fashion designers, covering up their nudity with the latest in leaf fashion, while the serpent cackles in the corner, collecting royalties for his marketing efforts. While some may view their fraught experience as a cautionary tale, we can't help but chuckle. Their choice to embrace temptation didn't immediately lead to fruit smoothie utopia, but rather the baffling, ironic reveal that knowledge leads to an eternally unfinished must-do list of adulting, complete with paperwork and more responsibility. So remember, if an apple looks too good to be true, it probably is. And if you ever encounter a talking snake offering unsolicited life advice, just say no. Picture this. Around 4004 BCE, under a sweltering Mesopotamian sun, Eve stands in the midst of a lush garden that is frankly way too convenient for anyone's good. Everything around her is picturesque. The grass is the kind of green that would make Starbucks call it vibrant in their marketing jargon. And the air smells faintly of anticipation, fresh fruits, and recently renovated primordial chaos. She swats at a mosquito, inadvertently starting one of the most controversial debates since the dawn of creation. Was it really an apple, or just a clever fib by every dietitian who dared to traverse the garden? Enter stage left, Adam, a man burdened with the existential dilemma of one job, naming animals, and enough free time to ponder the metaphysical implications of, are those really unicorns or just glorified goats? Every afternoon, he gazes longingly at the hanging fruit, currently the most chaotic celebrity in the garden. Its glistening skin beckons, hinting at taste sensations that could revolutionize the culinary world. But little does he know, this would soon spiral into his greatest mistake, and, ironically, his first bite of forbidden fruit would lead to humanity's finest existential crisis. But here's where the absurdity bubbles up like unfiltered spring water. To consume or not to consume? Fables had been passed down through generations of leafy trees about the great apple, revered not so much for taste but rather as a trophy of rebellion. You see, the entire garden had a slight air of melodrama and conspiratorial whispers among the flora. The daisies were rooting for freedom, while the ferns were just in it for the gossip. Naturally, the snake, sly as ever, played the role of the voice of reason. "Look, Eve," it coaxed, slithering closer. "This fruit has everything you need. Okay, perhaps not gluten-free, but who's counting, right?" The snake winked, undoubtedly having a job title in the garden equivalent to guardian of frivolous decisions. Perhaps a group meeting was needed, or an anti-apple support group. Some chickens could have clucked in caution. A pair of squirrels could have launched a campaign inviting everyone into the Eat Local Not Forbidden movement. Instead, Eve emotionally and literally bit into temptation. The moment her teeth sunk into the apple, it sent shockwaves through the garden akin to a premiere night for a long-awaited blockbuster. Adam, distracted by deep thoughts about squirrel fashion, suddenly found himself face to face with a disgraced Eve, wielding fruit like it was a golden globe. And what followed? Well, in true historical fashion, it blew up into epic proportions. Disgraced, naked revelations, and a swift exit from paradise were just the beginning. We imagine, as they wandered away, Adam nudging Eve, mumbling, "Thanks for the organic health crisis," while carrying the weight of humanity's first faux pas on his shoulders. Historians could point out that this marked the birth of humanity's on-again, off-again relationship with fruit and the concept of forbidden. As for that snaky character, it went on to star in countless morality plays about bad decisions. Remember this: sometimes a healthy relationship with fruit is better. Pour a tall glass of ambiguity. We find ourselves in the mythical cradle of civilization, centuries before calendars were popular, in a little paradise called Eden. The atmosphere? Charged, like an overripe fruit on the verge of rebellion, and the scent of jasmine laced with the faintest trace of impending doom hangs in the air, a warning note hanging between the nectar of nature and the narcissus of hubris. Here, in this fabled garden, we encounter our protagonists. Adam, the first man-person, with a whole lot of self-confidence and exactly zero fashion sense. And Eve, the original influencer, capable of turning anything into a trending topic, even forbidden fruit. And yes, speaking of fruit, it's the apple at the center of our impending culinary fiasco. A fruit so powerful, it could launch 1,000 debates, 100 lawsuits, and potentially a scathing series of tweets. Eden is a magnificent backdrop of luscious greenery, punctuated by the infrequent rustic crack of a twig snapped underfoot, the whispers of serpents who were obviously the original gossip columnists, and wind that seems to sweep in with a message of existential dread. You could almost hear the plants contemplating their existence, pondering if they're simply here to provide shade for the world's first awkward encounter. There's an unspoken ritual among the inhabitants of Eden: leave the apple alone, or risk earning the universe's worst Yelp review. And yet, the tension in the air thickens considerably as a sly serpent slithers nearby, practically Instagramming the moment for posterity. Unbeknownst to Adam, who is busy inventing the concept of a good day, Eve, feeling the tug of curiosity that humanity has yet to shake off, approaches the tree of knowledge, wearing her smirk like a new pair of shoes, daring, seductive, and completely impractical. Now, during antiquity, eating food had inexplicably grand consequences. Rumors circulated like wildfire. If you ate something from that tree, you'd unlock, quite literally, Pandora's box of problems. Forget kryptonite. This was the ultimate forbidden snack. The garden had its own endearing superstitions. If you even glanced too long at the apple, you'd risk summoning neighborhood gossip and divine retribution simultaneously. Supernatural, social anxiety, completely normal. With melodramatic flair fit for a soap opera, Adam finally notices Eve mid-chew, panic seizes him as a zillion thoughts race through his head. Did she really just bite that thing? What happens next? Will they be banished from Eden? Or worse, suburban life? In a shocking twist, Eve, after savoring the fabled taste, turns to Adam with a look that says, "I regret nothing. Be cursed." Suddenly, a bright light descends from above. The music shifts into an ominous chord, and a voice booms across the garden. "Did you eat from the tree?" Of course, Adam blames Eve faster than a child pointing a finger at his sibling during family game night. Eve, in a moment of self-defense, responds, "But the serpent made me do it." Cue the three-way blame game, a timeless tradition that highlights humanity's greatest achievement to date, the art of passing the buck. And just like that, the paradise was flipped into pandemonium, the wardens of Eden absolutely quaking in their sandals, as the apple served not just as a forbidden fruit, but as the catalyst for potentially the worst decision in history. One bite and boom, the world had entered the age of consequences, aka reality. So what's the lesson? Sometimes one little decision can spiral into a Herculean saga of regret. But hey, on the bright side, never underestimate the allure of fruit. Cue the dramatic music. The year, an undefined time in the dim, mythical corners of ancient Mesopotamia, where the Tigris meets the Euphrates, an unwelcome blend of warm breeze and awkward social dynamics. The scene? A sprawling garden bursting with every plant imaginable, except, curiously, anything resembling a decent food safety standard. The air is pungent with the scent of fresh figs and a hint of existential dread. Enter Eve, the original foodie and self-proclaimed goddess of all things edible, sporting a glorious, if somewhat flimsy, fig leaf bikini. Today's special? The infamous forbidden fruit which, rumor has it, might just end humanity as we know it. The biblical equivalent of a red carpet premiere for organic produce, this moment is practically dripping with delicious irony. As Eve contemplates this fruity little dilemma, she's flanked by Adam, an apologist for the status quo, who's passionately discussing the merits of garden life. You know, we could just stick to raspberries. Not all that glitters has to be delicious. A discussion so thrilling it's sure to rival watching paint dry. The atmosphere is ripe with tension. Or maybe that's the high levels of potassium. The sound of chirping crickets becomes a backdrop for Eve's inner turmoil. What are the stakes of a single bite? Nothing much, just global shame and a recurring cycle of shame. In the spirit of absurdity that prevails, gardeners of yore have peppered the Edenic diet with a heap of superstitions. Don't let the serpent see you, they say. But how can you hide from your friendly neighborhood psychoreptile? Only eat after sunset, prompts another, suggesting that nighttime munchies are the real risk. Let's not even talk about the medicinal herbs that are now misunderstood as witchcraft due to some slow-to-accept reviewers. Suddenly, heaven descends into chaos. Eve reaches for the fruit. It's shiny, seductive, and suspiciously low in calories. In an ironic twist of fate, instead of the world ending, she takes a bite and is smacked with an overwhelming sensation of absolute nothingness. The supposed ultimate empowerment turns out to be a false promise, like investing in a miracle weight loss program. In a fit of existential crisis, she turns to Adam, who, still munching on a somewhat safer apple, offers sage advice. maybe it's less about the fruit and more about the company. Cue the melodrama. The myth becomes less about free will and more about a bad date where both parties are regretting their choices. In a moment of gravity-defying irony, Eve realizes that her bites into liberty have resulted not in rebirth, but rather in where shall we hide next slumber party awkwardness. Turns out, all it took to kick off a downfall was a bit of misplaced curiosity and a reluctance to eat safely. Why bother with organic when there's a risk of celestial repercussions? Lesson learned? Never bite off more than you can chew, especially if it comes with existential implications. Cut to the sunlit, seemingly perfect day in the Garden of Eden, sometime around 4000 BC. Birds chirp melodiously in an unintentional symphony. A clear blue sky stretches endlessly, and the intoxicating aroma of ripe fruit infuses the lush air. Enter Adam and Eve, blissfully unaware that their grocery list is about to take a detour through the annals of catastrophic culinary history. In this paradise, the pièce de résistance, the infamous apple. A fruit so delightful, it sparked human curiosity, scandal, and an eternity of bad puns. With a sheen so glossy it could compete with the finest car wax, this apple hangs from the tree of knowledge, seemingly waiting for the unwitting couple like a contented cat poised over its latest victim. Now, let's talk atmosphere. The sound of rustling leaves, the smell of floral orchids fighting for attention against the sweetness of luscious fruits, and the distant growls of creatures who wish they were on an all-fruit diet but were tragically doomed to eat meat. The fabled serpent, wrapped around a branch like a bad magician on his last gig, watches the intrigue unfold, his voice sultry yet brimming with mischief. The characters. Our would-be heroes. Adam, the world's first clueless gentleman, sporting fashionable fig leaves, stumbles upon Eve engaging in existential debate with the serpent. Eve, beautiful yet disdainful of backyard ambivalence, stares skeptically at this forbidden fruit as if it were an avocado toast trending on social media. As tensions rise, the serpent starts his pitch with all the enthusiasm of an overzealous door-to-door salesman. Oh, but Eve, this apple? It's not just any apple. It's the apple. It promises enlightenment, wisdom, a fruit of knowledge. And hey, who wouldn't want to know why the neighbor's giraffe never roams past the fence? The theatrics reach a fever pitch as Adam enters, fumbling his own ignorance, throwing his hands in the air like a careless waiter preparing for an inevitable disaster. What's this? An apple? Forbidden? Sounds interesting. Cue dramatic stares as Eve weighs the risks of knowledge versus potential punishment. It's like an episode of a cooking show about dangerous ingredients. And here they are, tempted by a garnished disaster. Suddenly, our daring couple takes the plunge into culinary chaos. With a crunch that echoes through the garden, history unfolds. The apple is devoured. There's a metallic taste in the air. The ground trembles, probably just from the sheer weight of irony, as they realize they've inadvertently signed up for parental guidance on existence. In the aftermath, they don their fig leaves, but realize they also need a stylist. Nothing screams Eden chic like a mismatched combination of foliage. Meanwhile, poor serpent, momentarily caught in the riptide of human error, looks on in disbelief as freedom from ignorance swiftly spirals into living under the blame of eternal consequences. And just like that, paradise is overthrown by a fruit destined to be the star of debates for millennia. Because nothing speaks more eloquently about our human experience than the choice between curiosity and consequences. So what's the moral of the story? Never turn your back on a fruit that promises wisdom, because you'll inevitably end up cut to the year 4004 BC. The air is serene, birds are chirping, and the sun shines down on what seems to be the universe's first living room. A lush, extravagant paradise dubbed the Garden of Eden. Picture it, the first inhabitants, Adam and Eve, lounging in the grass like garden-variety hipsters, completely clueless that their tendency toward curiosity would kickstart the world's most melodramatic family feud. The atmosphere smells like a mix of fresh produce and existential dread. You can hear the soft rustle of leaves, the casual chatter of animals debating the latest gossip. Was that a snake slithering up to Eve? Very sus. And the eerily peaceful sound of fate knocking at Adam's door. As we explore this Edenic utopia, our favorite couple sits amidst a cornucopia of fruits, but only one matters. A tantalizing, shiny apple nestled in the branches of the tree of knowledge. This wasn't just any fruit. This was the apple, the ultimate snack, the one that could cause theological and dietary controversy for centuries to come. Enter the serpent. Not your average garden-variety snake. Think of him as the original upstart entrepreneur of temptation, sporting a hat that reads Salesman of the Year in gold. He slithers up to Eve with a sales pitch so slick it could put a used car dealer to shame. You know, Eve, if you just take a bite of this apple, you'll be as wise as the gods. It was the first ever instance of a product being marketed as a no-strings-attached enlightenment. Tension builds as Eve contemplates this seemingly innocent offer. After all, apples had a pretty solid dietary reputation. They were good for the heart, moderation was key, and despite the rising cholesterol from that random goat cheese she tried last week, what could possibly go wrong? As the serpent quips, what's a little disobedience among friends? Eve's eyes glaze over at the sight of the forbidden fruit, its shimmering skin practically glistening with marketing potential. Waiting in the wings, Adam twiddles his thumbs, blissfully unaware that he'll soon be the punchline to humanity's oldest joke, the one where he loses the rib and common sense. After briefly consulting several species of animals who were mostly just impressed by Eve's ability to reach the higher branches, she bites into the apple. Suddenly, boom! Knowledge floods in like an avalanche of anxiety. They become acutely aware of their own nakedness, and blushing like a pair of Victorian schoolchildren caught in a scandal. Cue divine intervention. God appears. Hey guys, I had one rule. But, interestingly enough, his tone isn't thunderous, but rather miffed. Like a parent who asks you to clean your room and comes home to find instead that you've redecorated with glitter and bad art. In the fallout, we find out that curiosity not only killed the cat, it also got Adam and Eve expelled from paradise and kick-started a long line of generational drama and snake oil salesmen. It turns out that nothing says real growth like a little cosmic punishment. And as it turns out, the moral of this little tale: never trust a fruit that offers wisdom at the cost of paradise. Lesson learned? The apple may not. Picture this: the Garden of Eden, a lush paradise overflowing with colorful fruits, with one glaring exception: a rather over-dramatic talking snake. It's approximately 4004 BC, and the atmosphere is such that the only thing more fragrant than the blooms is the distinctly pungent smell of poor decision-making wafting through the air. The sun dangles lazily in the sky, like it's on an extended coffee break, while Adam, our strapping yet blissfully ignorant protagonist, kicks back under the shade of an apple tree. To his left lies Eve, who, despite her outwardly perfect appearance, is having a whirlwind of existential crises concerning her wardrobe choices. Behind them, the snake, whose career path is an early foray into psychological manipulation, lounges casually, planning its next career, defining speech about free will and dietary choices. One day, while Adam is busy naming the animals, that one looks like it should be a platypus, and that one a giraffe. The tantalizing aroma of all the delicious fruits fills the air. Not just any fruit, we're talking about the juicy, vibrant red apple, just sitting there like the offer of 1,000 bad life choices. You see, in this slice of paradise, fruit wasn't merely sustenance. No, it was an unregulated buffet of sensuality, forbidden love, and subpar decision-making strategies. The script here read, "Don't eat the fruit, and for heaven's sake, avoid talking snakes like they're a plague rat gasping for attention," which was evidently lost on Adam and Eve. Cue the dramatic speech from the snake, complete with a flourish worthy of a Shakespearean monologue. "But the fruit? It's so shiny and delicious, and oh so forbidden. Who cares what some distant deity has to say about it?" With a wink that screamed, "You won't regret this," the snake had them at hello. Suddenly, we're gripped by history's first case of fruit-related insecurity and insatiable curiosity. Eve takes the bait, literally, and what followed was the first instance of post-snack regret. The fruit was exquisite, bursting with flavors that no one ever thought to describe before, like something you'd find on a promising Instagram feed. The moment she took a bite was also when the proverbial apple truly didn't fall far from the tree. Yet, in a twist that can only be described as an Adam and Eva average twist, nothing happened. No storm clouds rolled in, no lightning bolts struck. Instead, they just found themselves wearing scratchy leaves instead of their previous birthday suits, a sudden fashion trend that would take entire eons to rectify. Totally worth it, right? As the two munched away on the forbidden fruit, they learned a valuable lesson about rebellion. It's often less about the act and more about the inevitable resale value of your post-rebellion wardrobe. And, as they looked into the distance, they realized they'd have to face their landlord, the Almighty, who had just updated the terms of their lease from yay to nay. In summary, what began as a simple snack spiraled into a whole world of consequences, underscoring that sometimes even life's most tantalizing choices come with the cost of eviction and a lifetime ban on utopian picnics. So, what's the takeaway? Sometimes, curiosity really does kill the cat. Or, in this case, the idyllic picture this: the glorious dawn of mankind. The year unknown but universally acknowledged as spectacularly awkward. The place? A lush garden, so pristine it could be a travel brochure for existential bliss, where our first couple, Adam and Eve, lounged around like they'd just inherited the earth and all the organic fruit within. A hapless snake, yes, a snake, waddled up sporting a dubious smile, ready to spice up their menu with an apple. The air was filled with the aromatic bouquet of fresh blooms and the tantalizing smell of an impending scandal. The sun cast a heavenly glow on Eve's shiny new leaf ensemble, while Adam, sporting the latest in fig fashion, was feeling pretty smug about his all-you-can-eat buffet of fruits. But wait, what's that? The melodious chirping of innocent birds, or the hushed whispers of impending doom. Enter the serpent, an enthusiastic salesman for the do-as-you-please diet plan. Snaking his way through the foliage, he peddled the forbidden apples with a charm that could probably sell sand in the desert. "Heard good things about this fruit, real game changer," he hissed. "One bite," he promised, and life would never be the same. Tension rose as Eve considered the shiny fruit, her hands practically itching to grab it and drown her hunger and curiosity both at once. The garden was loaded with rules, but heck, even a garden needs a little rebellion for fun, right? Besides, Adam was munching on his fifth pomegranate, totally oblivious to the thrills of rebellion. Cue the sassy banter. Why are there no alternatives to this apple? Eve pondered aloud, contemplating if the absence of a fruit salad bar might be intentional. Was God keeping them from culinary variety, or just overly vigilant about counting calories? As Eve finally bitten into this so-called forbidden fruit, time stood still and probably went on a coffee break. Adam, hearing the crunch that echoed like a gavel of doom, turned with that look of horror that could rival a toddler caught in the cookie jar. And, just like that, reality hit. They were suddenly aware of, well, everything. And, really, who could blame them? Knowing you're naked when you were previously blissfully oblivious must be a wardrobe malfunction at the cosmic level. The original sin turned out to be less of divine betrayal and more of a culinary mishap with consequences that echoed through time. Probably should have Googled if it was organic or genetically modified. The irony? Once the two experienced their newfound knowledge, the garden tossed them out like last week's leftovers, leaving them to grapple with the fruit-induced fallout and sudden fashion choices. But wait, let's not forget about the real takeaways from this gastronomy gone rogue. God's culinary quarantine policies allowed humanity to embark on a wild quest of food and mistrust, leading to an endless cycle of diets, food fads, and existential crises. So, what's the moral of our freshly squeezed tale? Sometimes curiosity isn't just a cat's undoing. It might also send you spiraling out of paradise and into a life of less than spectacular. And so, dear audience, we drift towards the end of our whimsical journey through the blissful chaos of the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve blissfully twirled around obliviously, trying to find the perfect fig leaf to impress each other. In this serene paradise, one must take a moment to ponder humanity's most amusing delusion. To believe, with a feathered cap of naivety, that we hold dominion over our fellow Earth inhabitants, particularly the animals. We prance about in boardrooms, spouting grand strategies about the human condition, while inadvertently attracting the ire of our four-legged friends. After all, they are the ones who have been plotting their sweet revenge since the first time a farmer shouted at a chicken for simply being, well, chicken. It's perhaps an ironic twist of fate, don't you think? Humanity, in all its hubris, has convinced itself that domestication equates to control. Yet, With each cunning gaze of a cat or the mischievous bark of a dog, one wonders if they aren't just biding their time, waiting for the perfect moment to reclaim their throne. A historical rundown showcases a rather enlightening parade of animal vengeance. The great rat rebellions of the 14th century, where they became the cat's meow by repopulating cities faster than a flea market after a yard sale. And who could forget the legendary rebellion of the horses, which resulted in what we now call the Trojan horse, an event marked by sheer audacity as those crafty equines cozied up to the Greeks, only to set humanity on no fabled course of confusion. Remember that infamous cat video craze? It isn't just cute antics. It's our furry overlords showcasing their whimsical artistry, while subtly snickering at our financial misguidance as we forked over millions for pet influencers. Quite well orchestrated indeed. In retrospect, maybe that tail-wagging puppy isn't just expressing joy. He could very well be winding up for a prank of monumental proportions, secretly planning his escape to ascend into the realms of the household where humans still believe they hold the reins. So, here lies our lesson. Bathed in sulphurous sunshine and dripping in irony. Perhaps it's time we start genuinely acknowledging that the animals don't merely dwell in our gardens. They patiently await the day they can rewrite history themselves and maybe hitch a ride on the next spaceship to Mars while we're still fumbling around with our fruit. In conclusion, with a nod to the wisdom of the ages and a wink at our folly, I leave you with this nugget of delight. Always remember, when you think you've got the upper hand with your pet, it's merely a matter of time before they demonstrate they have been the ones holding the leash all along. Good night, and may your dreams be as lush and comically chaotic as the garden we've just so tenderly traversed.